I'm a behavioral decision theorist, which means that I look at how people make decisions and judgments from a psychological or behavioral perspective as opposed to a rational perspective. Most of my research historically has focused on how people make judgments and decisions under conditions of uncertainty. Recently, we've been branching out into some new areas that are very exciting. The first area that I'll talk about is some research that we've done on the nature of decisiveness and indecisiveness, which is a surprisingly under-researched topic in psychology, economics, and the management sciences. We've focused on two topics in particular. One is understanding just the nature of decisiveness and indecisiveness, and what the different kinds of clusters of behavior are that represent decisive or indecisive behavior, what people mean when they say somebody is decisive or indecisive. Existing scales of decisiveness or indecisiveness tend to be unidimensional. In other words, they assume that there's just one kind of decisiveness or indecisiveness, and they tend to focus on people's introspection about how they feel about decisions, rather than actually asking them about kinds of observable behaviors. So we want to remedy that by developing a scale that would be potentially multi-dimensional and focus on actual behaviors that people exhibit. And what we found surprised us in a lot of ways. We found that, in fact, there are three different kinds of indecisive behaviors. Each of these are not mutually exclusive. You could be one or all of them or none of them. The three different dimensions I'll talk about as three different types. The first kind of indecisive are people who find decisions both difficult and unpleasant. So this is your traditional kind of indecisiveness. These are people who stand in front of the refrigerator for a while trying to decide what they want to eat, or try multiple outfits in the morning, which, interestingly enough, men do almost as much as women do. These are people who really are kind of neurotic about decisions and don't like to make trade-offs between different kinds of options. Interestingly enough, we found that these people are also impulsive, which went counter to our expectation. We thought that maybe you have two kinds of people. There are the people who are impulsive and make decisions too quickly, and people who are indecisive who can't make decisions. It turns out that those are the same kinds of people in this case. So the same kind of person who stands in front of the refrigerator not knowing what they want also is the kind of person who comes home from the store with items that they hadn't planned on buying. And the idea is that when they see options one at a time in the store, they don't like to think about opportunity costs, things that they have to give up in order to get it. Whereas when they have a choice between two different meals, let's say, or two different outfits, and they have to choose between them, they're like a deer in headlights, caught in an approach conflict. So that's type one, what we would call impulsive indecisiveness. The second kind is what we might call compulsive indecisiveness. This is the more kind of cerebral type. This is the more perfectionistic type. These are kinds of people who find decisions not necessarily unpleasant, but they do find them difficult. And the reason they find them difficult is they get caught up in this kind of analysis paralysis, where they want to get the decision absolutely perfect. This is the kind of person, for instance, who spends days or weeks investigating online every possible digital camera or laptop computer before they're willing to buy, or they have to sleep on every big decision, or visit an expensive purchase like a house or a piece of art several times before they're willing to decide. So that's type 2, which is a very different kind of phenomenon. Type 3, you might call a disorganized kind of indecisiveness. These are the kinds of people who don't necessarily find decisions unpleasant or difficult, but when the decision moment arrives, they're caught off guard. They're not prepared. It's the kind of person who gets to the head of the fast food line, for instance, not knowing what they want, or goes to the video store not knowing what they want, or doesn't respond to a wedding or party invitation right away. So they end up looking indecisive in different ways. And each of these different kinds of indecisiveness correlate with different kinds of outcomes in the real world.